Okay, so we were discussing about the role of soil, climate, and environment factors in the vegetable production. And in the last lecture, we have discussed about the role of temperature on the germination of seeds and on the growth of the vegetable crops. And there are some other factors also which affect the seed germination as well as the development of the vegetable crops. So the next factor is moisture in the form of rainfall or in the form of humidity. So when we talk about vegetables, these are composed of 80 to 90% of water. So water is a basic requirement for vegetable production, right? So water, even if there is too little moisture is present for the vegetable production or too much water is present, both of too little and too much are harmful for the vegetable crops, even for the germination and for the growth, and it also reduces the yield. So moisture influences the seed germination, the vegetative growth of the vegetables, the flowering time. It also affects the fruit setting. It affects the maturity, quality of the vegetables, seed production, diseases and pest occurrence, and seed viability in the storage time. So abundant water favors the vegetative phase of growth by rapid increasing cell division. So when there is a lot of water is present, then vegetative growth will be more. Okay, so under the moderate water supply, the plant growth decreases. So there should be a proper water supply for the normal growth of the vegetables. So, according to water requirements, vegetables are classified into different groups. There are very good users of waters and which are having poor roots penetration, and some of the vegetables having vigorous root penetration and they are very economical water users, and some of the vegetables are economical water users with the poor root penetration, right? So crops are vegetable crops are divided into different groups according to their water requirement, right? So firstly, there is a group of crops, vegetable crops, which are great water users with poor roots penetration, means their root penetration is not good. Root penetration is very light, you can say. They have very poorly developed root system, but they are great water users. They need water for their growth development. And the vegetable crops like cauliflower, cabbage, radish, leafy vegetables, and cucumber, these require high amount of water and have poorly developed root system, right? So if there is any stress of moisture, then these crops will not grow properly. They are very sensitive to drought conditions, right? So drought conditions should not be there. Water should be supplied time to time. Next group of vegetables is economical water users with vigorous root penetration, right? So they have a very good root system, a deep root system, and they can use water very economically. So some crops like melon, bitter gourd, and cucumbers have developed a very deep root system, and they have large leaf area, and leaves are hairy and lobed. So because leaves are hairy and lobed, so there will be less transpiration, right? And due to their deep root system, they can uh, efficiently use water from the soil, right? So next group is economical water users with poor root penetration. Some of the crops having root penetration very poor, but they use water very economically. The crops like onion, garlic, asparagus, they are having poor root system, but have very small and wavy leaves, right? Because they are having small leaves, wavy leaves, which reduces the transpiration rate. So they use water very economically. Next is the group economical water users with moderate penetration, right? Moderate penetration of roots. Now, crops like solanaceous crops, root vegetables, and legumes, they have less leaf area and leaves are hairy, which reduces the rate of transpiration. right? They are also having moderate penetration of roots, and their leaf area is small and the leaves are hairy, so they also reduce the rate of transpiration and use water economically. Now, extravagant water users with poor root penetration. Some of the vegetables are there which are having poor root penetration, as well as they are extravagant in the water uses. So these vegetables are aquatic vegetables such as watercress, some cultivars of taro. These are having poor root system without any root hairs, so they cannot use water efficiently. So they are extravagant water users. So this is the classification of vegetables according to their water requirement, right? Now, what is the effect of water logging on the seed germination and on growth of the vegetables? So under waterlogged conditions, roots cannot take oxygen, right? Oxygen is necessary for their growth, so they cannot uptake oxygen, and as they are not taking oxygen efficiently, their nutrient level will be decreased also, and their water uptake uh, capacity will also be declined. So water logging causes the death of root hairs. It reduces the absorption of nutrients and waters. It increases the formation of toxic compounds. It retards the growth of the plants. And finally, it also reduces the crop productivity, right? So waterlogging conditions should be avoided always. If there is a heavy rains, at that time drainage must be provided to the vegetable crops, because vegetable crops in the waterlogging condition cannot grow properly. They cannot take oxygen properly, they cannot uptake nutrients properly, their growth will be lower, the growth will be retarded. So waterlogging conditions should always be avoided. Flooding is most serious at high temperature conditions than the low temperature conditions. So when flooding as well as high temperature conditions prevail, then the growth of the vegetables will be declined, it will be retarded as compared to flooding at low temperature conditions, right? Now, vegetables, according to their sensitivity level, they are divided into three groups. So, there are some crops which are very sensitive to waterlogging conditions. There are some moderately sensitive to waterlogging condition, and some of the crops they are moderately tolerant to waterlogging conditions. So, the sensitive crops are cole crops, beans, pumpkin, radish, tomato, watermelon, and the crops which are moderately sensitive to waterlogging conditions, these are cucumber, brinjal, garlic, onion, and peas. And the crops which are moderately tolerant to the waterlogging conditions, these are sponge gourd, cowpea, sweet potato, and calocasia. So this table is showing the sensitivity level of the different vegetable crops. Now humidity in the air. So humidity plays important role in the occurrence of pests and diseases. If there is too much humidity, then there will be more diseases attack on the vegetable crops. Certain diseases like powdery mildew, these are associated with the dry weather. But humid condition is also known to favor diseases like downy mildew and fungal blights affecting foliage. Right. So in the dry weather, if there is humidity is very less, then powdery mildew diseases can attack the vegetable crops, and in the very humid conditions, some diseases like downy mildew and fungal blights, they uh, may attack the vegetable crops. So a cool humid place is ideal for growing cabbage, cauliflower, turnip, knoll cole, spinach, beetroot, and these crops, and especially for the seed production, right? So on the contrary, dry and higher temperature conditions are required for the seed production of onion, broadleaf mustard, radish, cucumber, squash, and pumpkin, right? So some of the vegetables require a humid place for their seed production, and some of the vegetables they require higher temperature and less humidity for seed production. In the cooker beds, moist condition influences the onset of flowering significantly. So low humidity accelerates the appearance of staminate flowers, while high humidity favors the production of pistillate flowers. So humidity also effect on flowering. It also having effect at the time of flowering. So if there is no humidity at the time of the flowering, then staminate flower will appear more. If there is high humidity, it will favor the pistillate flowers. Okay, and the crops like beans and cauliflowers or cole crops, they are known to tolerate and tolerate humidity, more humidity and conditions better than most of the other vegetables. Right? So they can tolerate more humid conditions. Dry weather like low humidity is favorable for seed maturity and harvesting in most of the crops. So seeds stored under low humidity in storage, right? So at the time of harvesting, the humidity should be less. If there is less humidity, then harvesting will be easy and seed maturity will be more fine if there is low humidity at the time of harvesting and seed maturity, and seed storage is also done under low humidity conditions. So humidity is inversely correlated to temperature during storage, right? So humidity plays important role at the time of flowering, at the time of harvesting, at the time of maturity, at the time of storage, and it also favors the occurrence of pests and diseases. So we should always check for the humidity conditions for different crops, right? Next is wind. Wind again, it is also having a role on the growth of the vegetables as well as at the time of maturity, at the time of flowering. So winds are small, a slight wind, we can say slight wind is essential for the supply of carbon dioxide near the plant surface. But when there are strong winds, it will harm the vegetable production. There are typhoons which are very destructive to the vegetable crops. At the time of flowering, if winds prevails, then flowering will shed off and the flowers will not convert into the fruits, right? So at the time of harvesting also, at the time of seed harvesting, seed will shatter down if the winds prevail, high winds prevails, right? So to protect the vegetable crops from winds, we can provide a wind shelters or wind breaks. We can plant trees which are known as wind breaks or shelter belts or wind shelters, and these trees can reduce the effect of wind on the vegetables, right? So all the vegetable crops are very susceptible to strong winds. Examples are there like at the time of seed production of onion, it is very problematic due to windy weather, and at the time of bolting stage in the month of March and April. So in every crop at the time of seed production, if the winds prevails, seed will shatter down, the seed yield will be very less. At the time of flowering, if winds prevail, flowers will shed off, they will not convert into the fruits and the yield again will be very less. So winds affect the vegetable growth, vegetable development, right? Now soil, the effect of soil on the vegetables. So most of the vegetables grow well in fertile soils with the continuous supply of the nutrients and moisture. So as plants taking all the nutrients from the soil and they are also taking moisture from the soil, so soils are playing very important role in their growth, in their development. So most of the vegetables grow well in fertile soils. Sandy soils are best suitable for the root crops, for bulb crops and for tuber crops. Sandy soils are preferable for the early crops, right? The early crops are mostly grown in the sandy soils. Sandy soils allow fast development and easy harvesting of the roots and tuber crops. Now loamy soils are ideal for many of the vegetables crops. They have good mixture of sand and clay. They have good nutrient and water holding capacity. They provide good aeration to the root zone. right? And clay soils are difficult to work when they are dry, but they have good water and nutrient holding capacity. So different types of soils like sandy soils, loamy soils, and clay soils are there. And some of the crops require sandy soils for their proper growth and development. Some of the vegetables require loamy soils for their ideal growth and development, and very few of the vegetables require clay soils, because clay soils are somewhat difficult to work, they are difficult to cultivate, but they are having good water holding capacity as well as good nutrient holding capacity. So at the time of sowing we should always check for the soils, that which soils are best for the particular vegetable crops, and only then we should uh, sow the vegetables in the soil, right? So plants are taking nutrients from the soil, plants are taking moisture from the soil. So we should check for their nutrient status, their moisture status at the time of sowing. Only after that they can provide the proper nutrients and plant growth will be good, right? So now there are some problems in the soils like salinity or sodicity. Salinity means some soils having more salt concentration and they are saline in nature and they adversely affect the plant growth, right? So adverse effects of the soil salinity on the plant growth vary with the crop being grown, right? So some of the crops are very sensitive to saline, some of the crops are tolerant to saline conditions, right? So they are having adverse effects on their growth. Presence of the salinity in the soil solution resulting from the indigenous salt in the soil or from the salt added by the irrigation water, right? So soils may be having salt in the soils from where they were originated, and sometimes salt may be added to water when the irrigation water is very poor and irrigation water is having more salt content. At that time also soils may get may become saline in nature, right? And this salinity affect the growth of the vegetable crops by reducing the water available to the crops, okay? So the water availability will be reduced if the saline conditions are there, and there will be increased in the concentration of some ions that have a toxic effect on the plant metabolism, right? So specific ions are there present in the saline waters or saline soils, so they will having a toxic effect on the plant metabolism. Then effect of sodicity, there is a detrimental effect that is associated with the sodium accumulation in the soil, and it can be divided into two categories, that is deterioration of the physical condition of the soil, right? If there is sodium accumulation in the soil, the physical condition of the soil will be deteriorated and it cannot provide nutrients and water to the crops properly, so the crop growth will be slower, will be retarded, and sodium toxicity may occur in the soil, which will again affect the growth and development of the vegetable crops, right? So this is about the soils, that how soils can affect the growth and development of the vegetables. Next is depth of sowing. Depth of sowing in the soil also determines the germination of the seeds and their growth. Okay, so depth of soil should be proper. Some of the seeds are very small and uh, they should be sown only in the upper layer, only in 1 centimeter uh, depth deep. And some of the vegetable seeds are larger in size and they need to be grown up to 2 to 3 centimeters deep, or sometimes some of the vegetable seeds are grown up to 5 centimeter depth, right? So the depth of the sowing determine the germination, right? So general thumb rule, according to a general thumb rule, the larger the seed can be planted more deeply than the small seeds, right? So small seeds can be sown in the upper layer, only 1 centimeter of the soil, and larger seeds can be planted more deeply, up to 5 centimeters also. Okay, this is due to the energy needed to emerge. So light seeds, they require less energy to emerge, and the bigger seeds, they require more energy to emerge. So larger seeds have greater food reserves from which to draw energy for respiration and growth. They are able to emerge from the greater depths. And soil types also affect the planting depth. There are different types of soils. They also affect the depth of the planting of seeds. The surface of sandy soils tend to dry very quickly. So seeds planted in these soils should be planted deeper than in the loamy soils, right? So the main soils for the vegetable cultivations are sandy soils and loamy soils. So in sandy soils, seeds should be sown somewhat deeper than in the loamy soils, because sandy soils tend to dry out very quickly, right? So if the seed is sown deeper in these soils, then it can retain moisture from the deeper layers, and it can be germinate properly, and its growth will be good. Now seed dormancy. Seed dormancy also affect the seed germination, right? So most of the seeds produced by the mature plants, they pass through a period of inactivity or dormancy prior to germination, right? So many seeds, they require to break the dormancy, right? So their dormancy should be broken before the germination, and during this dormancy period, these seeds are inactive, but they are viable, right? So once they pass this dormancy period, they can be germinated. Okay, so dormancy may be internal, it may be external, or it may be combination of both. And now we will talk about the internal dormancy, means dormancy in the embryo. So this kind of dormancy occurs when the seed contains underdeveloped or immature embryo. So inside the seed, the embryo will be immature or it will be underdeveloped. So the dormancy may occur. So internal dormancy of most seeds involves the period of after ripening. After ripening occurs when a seed doesn't ready to germinate until it completes a certain stage of development, right? So because the embryo is underdeveloped, so it requires a certain period of development so that it can develop properly, embryo can develop properly inside the seed. After that period only it can germinate well. So some seeds mature in the fruit but do not germinate until released from the fruit. This type of dormancy can be overcome. It can be only recovered, cannot be overcome. It can only be recovered by waiting till seed become ready, right? So this kind of dormancy cannot be overcome by the external factors. Now, external dormancy, and this dormancy may occur due to a hard seed coat, right? And seed may require a certain amount of light to germinate, causing the seed to remain dormant until exposed to light. So this kind of dormancy can be broken, right? So seed coat may be hard, it may be thick, it may prevent the absorption of water, it may prevent the absorption intake of oxygen, or physically preventing the expansion of the embryo. So seed coat, this type of dormancy is due to the seed coat. This type of dormancy can be recovered by scarification, right? So by scarification we can make seed coat soft and thin for easy germination, right? Scarification means we can rub the surface of seeds with some rough surface, and then seed coat will be softened, and then seed germination will be there. So this is all regarding the factors, the internal as well as external factors, biotic as well as the abiotic factors, which affect the germination, which affect the growth and development of the vegetable crops. So this is all. Thank you everyone.